Okay. Our next caller is Kevin calling from Seattle, Washington. We have a line open for you at 1-800-438-5090. That's 800-438-5090. Kevin, welcome to The Narrow Path. Thanks for calling.
Hey, Steve, I've got a question about, I guess, an apologetics question. I was listening to a debate, and the guy, the atheist, said, there very well could be a God, but he is, maybe sick and twisted given all the evil and suffering in the world. It's a pretty common question, but it's kind of a new twist I heard on it. Or I shouldn't say question, I should say objection. But I have my own thoughts on this, so I was just wondering what you thought about it. And if you wouldn't mind, I'll take your response off the air.
Okay. Appreciate the call.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Kevin. Bye now. Okay, so the atheist said, if there is a God, he must be somehow perverse. Or I've heard other atheists say, if there's a God, he's the devil. Now, what they're, of course, referring to is that there's a great deal of evil in reality, and they are holding God responsible for that evil. Now, I guess the first thing I'd say is, on what basis do we hold him responsible for that? Certainly, if God is the one who creates baby rapers and serial killers and, every kind of perverse and perverted thing, if God is the one who's the author of those things, then we are going to have to say God's idea of holiness and goodness that he claims for himself certainly is different than our sensibilities about it, because those things do not accord with holiness and righteousness. So if God is the cause and the creator of those things, then we definitely have to go back to the drawing board and revamp our theological opinion about the goodness of God. On the other hand, why should we say that he's the creator of those things? It is the theology of the Christian faith that when God made human beings, he made something in his image, something that was uncorrupt, but entirely, or maybe not entirely, but for the most part, free to choose his own path. He strongly urged the first humans to choose good and not evil. He told them if they choose evil, they're going to die. That's a strong incentive. And yet they chose evil against his protests. And it's the choice of human beings to do evil that is the cause of perversion and corruption in the world. So, if we're going to say, well, God was evil because he created people who were capable of doing evil, well, we might as well then say everybody who has children is evil, because you never know, but one of your kids might choose to do evil someday. When you have children and you rear them and you train them to do the right thing, but then they do the wrong thing, that's not your fault. That's their fault. They choose it. And if someone says, well, you should never have children then, because if Adolf Hitler's mother had remained a virgin and never had children, then there'd be 6 million Jews who would not have been killed in Nazi Germany. Well, that's true. They wouldn't have been killed that way. They would have died some other way, like everybody else does. There's not many surviving people from the Hitler era, who suffered in his camps. There are some, but they won't be around much longer, because people die very sadly. It's very sad that they die, and it's especially sad if they die painfully and horrendously. So no one's saying that's a good thing. But to say if Hitler's mother had not had a baby, then there would have been no Hitler, and those 6 million Jews would not have died when they did. We'd still have to deal with the fact that they would still die, and like all Gentiles, all people die eventually and have to face God. Now, death is not the ultimate disaster. It is a disaster. It's not the ultimate disaster. The ultimate disaster is to die on bad terms with God. And nobody has to. Nobody has to die on bad terms with God, because God is appealing to all to come to him and to repent. So there's never a need that anyone must die against their wishes on bad terms with God, because they could choose to be on good terms with God. Now, they might still die, and they might even still die at the hands of violent criminals and evil people. But Hitler's mother did not know that Hitler was going to do what he was going to do. And some say, but God knew that Adam and Eve were going to do what they were going to do. Well, God may have known it, but he still has every right to have children. If I knew every bad thing that each of my children have done in their lives before they were born, that doesn't mean it would not have been worthwhile to have them. I have 5 children. They're all grown, and in the course of their lives, they have done some things, like I have, that aren't the right things. Some things that have been hurtful, harmful to themselves and to other people, and to me even. So, I mean, that's just the cost of bringing free moral agents into the world. But having said that my children have done some things that were not perfect, and even that were hurtful, that doesn't mean it wasn't worth having them, or that I wish they had never been born. You see, the fact that people can do harm, and we even know they will, because you're never going to have a child who does no harm. You're never going to have a child who never sins. So we know before we have children, we're going to bring a sinner into the world. And we don't know to what degree their sins may cause harm, but we know they'll cause some harm. Yet it is no crime to bring them into the world. By bringing them into the world, we do not become responsible for whatever acts they choose, because it is they who choose them. Now, if someone believes what I've just said, then they will not be able to bring that criticism of God. God, knowing that his people were going to go wrong, yet not wanting them to and urging them not to, but giving them the free will, just like we give when we have a child, we're bringing a free will into the world. God is no more responsible for the choices they make than I'm responsible for the choices my children made when they were acting against my wishes as responsible adults. So, I mean, if the atheist, he points out what everybody can see. The world is full of evil. The world is full of suffering. The world is full of death. True that. It is. So is God responsible for that? Well, I would say he's only responsible for the things that he authored. That he's only responsible for the things that he brings about. And although God himself has brought about some rather severe things in the Bible, we have, first of all, to argue that they were not just and fair and good things. Severe things may not always be bad things. Just like, there are many people who would defend the bombing of Hiroshima. That was a very severe thing, and lots of people suffered for it. And I'm not sure I would defend it. But the point is, there are many people who think that was justifiable. It brought about something that was very good for most people, for the largest number of people. And so even some very severe things, in many cases, can be ethically justified in the minds of most people. And so why would we not argue that the very severe things that God has done are ethically justifiable, as he understands all the issues better than we do? So I'm not going to buy that criticism. It's a cute little criticism, but it's greasy kid stuff. It's not an intellectual argument. It's based on emotion. And that's almost all atheist arguments are. I don't know if I've yet heard an atheist argument that isn't based on emotion.